well, I'm off to Prague to make some new friends. And I felt like who else would be there except for weird nerds who'd like talk about space and design.
And it was true.
And it was true. And it was so exciting to see and hear people doing their nerd stardom stuff. And I just kind of thought, oh my gosh, this circle is going to just get that much bigger.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Offstage. I have the huge privilege of having with me the co-curators for the Canada exhibition at the Prague Quadrennial. Guys, thank you very much for being here with me. How you doing?
Great. Thrilled to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Having a blast.
Thank you for agreeing to being here. Let's get started by introducing yourselves. Why don't you all tell me your name, where you are, and what your specialty is?
I can go first. My name is Mishelle Cuttler. I'm here in Vancouver. I'm on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people here. I am a sound designer and a composer, and I am one of the curators for our exhibition in PQ27.
Anim bojo gamino b'mada zidakwe Anishinaabe Makwani Dodem Barents River Long Lake number 58 in Dunjaba, Vancouver, Ninda. My name is Lisa Cooke Ravensbergen in English. The other name I carry is Ojibwe. I'm also Swampy Cree and English and Irish on my mom's side. I'm here as a visitor in the unceded territories of what's colonially known as Vancouver, BC. And I'm one of the co-curators, and I would say my specialty is making theater.
Okay. Joe?
I'm Joe Pagnan. I'm in the Frontenac Arch biosphere on the shores of the St. Lawrence River near Kingston, Ontario, traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, as well as the Huron-Wendat people.
Cool. Well,
and my background, I guess. I'm I'm one of the co-producers of this wild ride we're on. And my profession, though, is designer first, educator, and creator of theater. It's many labels, multi-hyphenated.
I'm gonna start by throwing you all a curveball. So, do you know, in this 2027 edition of the Prague Quadrennial, how many times before has Canada been present at PQ?
Joe, I bet you know.
We've been doing it for quite a long time, 14 editions in total.
14? Okay.
Yeah, 14 editions, somewhere shortly after it started in the 60s.
I was gonna say, that's pretty much from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And since that time, Mishelle is the first female sound designer curating. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
yes, there has been limited female sound designers' work represented, but never a curated piece. There's never been a sound design focused piece, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm the first Indigenous co-curator or curator for the PQ in those 14 editions.
Cool. Congratulations, y'all. So, for someone who's never heard of the Prague Quadrennial, can you tell me what it is, why it's important, what does it mean for the theater community?
For me, it started in 2011. I was a recent graduate that got to go to the PQ. And what it means to everyone's a little bit different, I want to say. Like, it is this competition of art, a competition of design, but I think it's more this meeting place where we can debate, protest, connect, sort of beyond nationality, to understand how we fit in as creators in this global environment that is, dramatic at the best of times, to say it the nicest way. And it was the first time, for me at least as a young artist, that I got to see that there was a place that felt like there was care and like support to a certain degree, but there was like, what's the word I'm looking for? That the oddball that I was, the rebel artist, had a place at the international global level of designing. Because often as a designer, I saw myself serving a script or a purpose here back home. And that's when I got to see, design can lead the narrative? What? We can protest through our work, and it really, for me, that's what it was about. It was the mini activations that you got to be a part of when you were between the pubs of Prague, getting to see art exhibits, and then debating with these creators about why they were doing it, not just what the final product was, which was kind of cool. Did I answer the question? I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to hear these different takes. Mishelle, what is it for you?
Yeah, I've been a designer for like 15 years, and I've been on the board of the Associated Designers of Canada for a long time, probably like 8 years or so. And I used to think it was completely irrelevant to me as a designer in Canada, because all I knew was that a bunch of resources were going to this thing that was far away, and it wasn't really serving me. I was a sound designer. It was hardly ever any work that I could even consider sending. And I think there is always this question of, what is the value and the role of an international expo like this? But I just think that this year we have an opportunity to kind of make our offering something new and something that feels more relevant to what's going on here in Canada and throughout design generally. I don't know yet exactly, but I do know that we have an opportunity to really bring some voices there that haven't so far been heard. And yeah, it was also amazing. So we went last month to Prague to the symposium to get to see a little bit about what we were going to see. And already it was so incredible to see the connections between what we're doing here in Canada and so many different places around the world, and how there's a lot of places really far away from us that have shared values and shared questions. And there's other places that really have really different things that they're exploring. So I don't know. We'll see.
Lisa, what's your take?
I have so many takes. I think I'm the newest member to the Prague Quadrennial as well as ADC. I'm realizing when we were at the symposium, for me, I didn't quite know exactly what my place might be in the whole milieu of practice around design. But the more I listened to our colleagues, the more I realized I design spaces, I design relationships, I design vision, whether it's my own or someone else's, often through my dramaturgy process or progress, but also as a maker and as a collaborator. Somebody said at the symposium that they define design as performance. I think it was performance as a living system. And I really appreciated different ways, like Mishelle is talking about, these sort of alternative, but also very kind of standard, scenography. The word scenography was like every other sentence, it felt like. And that also resonated. I'm like, yes, I understand that. But I think the biggest thing for me was recognizing how design is really, it contributes to what is a living system. It's a living idea that embodies space, that colonizes spaces with bodies, that brings ideas from those lived experiences into the container of whatever is being designed. And I had written like, what is design? Because I was thinking about, well, what is design? And I thought, it's like a de-sign. It's like we're decolonizing like these, what has colonial significance, and we're deconstructing what value, what meaning, what purpose is. We're delighting in like alternative signs of cultural recognition, cultural sovereignty, whatever that might mean to people. We're deterring, for me in particular, deterring empire and decentering signs of empire. For me, that's as a so-called Canadian, but foremost as a Anishinaabe, as a Ojibwe woman and Swampy Cree woman, how my understanding of that relationship of occupation and of how design is influenced by that, and how it can sort of de-sign away or around or alongside or in spite of, is really interesting to me at the PQ, at that kind of level of engagement.
I love that. I love that idea of design as kind of like unsigning, right? That the almost the breaking down of the signs that establish the system. I love that. I never thought of that way. So since you already opened this door, I'm just gonna go through. The idea. I've served in.
There's gonna be windows flying open, just so you know. Get ready.
I've served in curatorial committees for the Prague Quadrennial exhibit, the national exhibit of Mexico, and the one in the States. And I feel like as a team, as a curatorial team, there's always a point where you sit down, take a hard look at each other and say, okay, what is national theater? What is a national voice of our theater, right? What is Canadian theater in this case for all y'all? How do you even approach that question?
If I may, Lisa and I responded to a call out by the Associated Designers of Canada. It was basically a submission. And I feel like it actually was not a very hard question for Lisa and I, especially considering the theme of the PQ in 2027, which is absences and silences. And so I think for both of us, we were like, it's pretty clear what the voices, or some voices that have been really, really silenced in Canada, are the voices of Indigenous women. And we have, Lisa, maybe you can speak more about the Seventh Fire, but our sort of pitch, or where we began, was taking a piece that we actually have developed together for 4 or 5 years.
At least,
which Lisa has been working on for probably over a decade, which is a spatial audio piece. And so it was kind of actually it felt very simple for me in terms of what are we trying to do, considering we had this work that was already really we just created over a long time. And then the question now is just how do we take it and sort of adapt it and build upon it for an exhibition space, as opposed to it's been more in a performance-y context so far.
But I think part of it is because the work itself that we're sourcing from, called The Seventh Fire, has been engaging with that question of what is theater, what is national, like the idea of nationalism when, empire is transgressing treaties all over the place and negating relationships through ill-advised intentions, and climate crisis is real, relating to who has sovereign authority over spaces that are occupied and unoccupied by humans. So I think the idea of what is theater, what is national theater, I think you're right. It's super complex depending on how awake you are to what the land has endured, what the land continues to endure, and what relationships have been severed by those various kind of systemic occupations around ownership and citizenship. So for me, Canadian theater, it feels like it's sort of like an artifact that is supposed to be sacred, but really what it is, it's just protected by some really old systems that serve a very specific ideology and serve a very specific economy that supports those kinds of systems around supremacy and the way stories are told and shared, the way people and who has access to those stories and those spaces. So for me, the exhibition that we're really kind of curious about is less about what is theater and how does nationalism play into the piece? Because I belong to a nation. I belong to 2 nations, and I'm also part of this colonial project called Canada that I've inherited through birth and through lineage. So for us, I think the piece really is exploring a part of it is what does belonging look like? How do you independently understand your belonging? And what collectively can we do together to co-create a future that we might all need in spite of those absences, in spite of the lack of access or experience that we may have interculturally or intergenerationally? So I don't know if that really answers the question, but I feel like Mishelle and I are constantly talking about this question. So
I think it does, and I mean it's such a big question, because you're absolutely right. I mean I like your response of well, I am part of the nation, right? Why wouldn't I be the national theater too? And yet again, if I may pose a provocation, as a curator, right? You are also being asked to how are we going to be represented at this place, right? So I guess this is a question that brings me into kind of curatorial framework. What would you say is your framework? Who is invited, who's not invited, or what is going to be kind of the boundary that is going to allow people to jump into this project?
Well, I would say that unlike what I've experienced in theater in Canada, that is set up to exclude, that this curatorial impulse we have is actually to presence. It's the opposite impulse. I would have as hazard the word matriarch, that there's a matriarchal approach to the curatorial concept, I think, that we have, in that just because women are being centered and women's voices and processes are being centered, that doesn't preclude other participation, other presences, other validities. Matriarchy is not the opposite of patriarchy. So it doesn't mean that we return the favor and exclude. It actually means the bigger opposite, which is that it actually invites. It actually requires participation on a deeper level than is just what is comfortable, what is easy, what is sort of the default of the systems that we kind of function in as artists. So for me, curatorially, that's where the curiosity lives, because I don't live in a society where that is a centralized value system. It's in spite of.
And I guess I can just add in terms of like designers, I think the word relationality, which Lisa has brought up, is sort of, if we're talking about like who literally gets or is invited to be part of it, I think that that's the main value, or a really big important value, because I know there's like so many amazing designers in Canada, and we have a very rich community all across our country, and it's hilarious because everything's really spread out and people are having to fly across the country all the time, and there's people who are doing amazing work. But what the value that's really important to us is this relationality and collaboration, which I think generally good designers are already good at, because it is about working within a framework of a larger piece with a bunch of other different designers, a bunch of performers, a director. I think that it should be part of a really important value of our work. And so I think we are centering process, because we know artistic rigor and whatever is always a value, right? Having us do our best to create something that fulfills our sort of dreams in terms of design. But beyond that, it's about the process. It's about how we can all work together, as Lisa said, within a context that may be a little bit of a new kind of vibe for some people.
Joe, as producer, what do you think is kind of like the framework that you're bringing in?
I'm living this. So we started off the process with the open call to put out that net wide to different curatorial visions and ways of approaching it. And we had a jury of 8 peers, but not just designers. They were ranging from production managers, producers, directors, not just of the community, and also a perfect range balance of non-binary men and women to respond to this at different steps in their career, some senior designers, some starting out for the first time. And they all resonated with this application, and many applications very well represented. But this one really, the specificity of the point of view that was coming to this rigor of changing what does curation look like as a framework, is what sort of took off in the room when we were discussing. I was an outside observer watching them discuss, and then they certify, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I can get behind this. And what I'm really excited by is this story, and seeing that the inclusion is not just following like sort of this national border framework. It's not looking at like provincial lines either. It's looking at relation truly at the heart of it, and it's already taken a form that I rather am energized by. Like I said, baby Joe is like weeping every time I look at what's happening right now. Connecting beyond, reaching out to different communities in other countries and bringing them into the discussion point. So it's less of this is us here now, and more of this is us here now.
I again, not to steal your thunder, but going back to
please
what Lisa was saying about belonging, I feel like that seems to be like a through line that from what I hear from what the three of you are saying, right? The idea of like this is not about the best and the brightest, right, or like the biggest designs or the biggest spectacle, right? It's about just belonging, kind of like entering into this current and forming part of the larger conversation. And yet,
sorry for jumping, but like and specificity, right? That's what came up in that feedback session was it did come up. How is this framework they're proposing? How is this vision going to include as many designers as possible from coast to coast? And it was a debate at the table that ended with, it doesn't need to be that. It needs to be specific in its goal, specific in its voice. And that will be the truest representation of where we are now, without having to try to do a catch-all and water down what that point is or what that point of view is.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I can totally relate, because that is something that I have seen this team struggle with before, right? Like, how do we like knock on every single door? And that is just by itself kind of like a physical impossibility. And I feel like some of the people that always tend to be more underrepresented just by the nature of the fact that they're entering the field is emerging designers. How do you all balance the presence of like well-established, famous designers in Canada with designers that are just entering the field, like people that probably haven't even heard about the Prague Quadrennial. They don't know this is something that it's worth applying to or being part of. How do you reach those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're certainly not concerned with like the most famous people, who's famous in Canadian design anyway.
There's a couple. There's a couple.
I know a few.
Sure,
there's a couple names. But, again, it's like we just want people that are gonna, be good collaborators who are gonna feel, and also we want to invite folks who are excited by this, which is not gonna be everybody, right? It's a very specific piece that is centering really different stuff than I think generally PQ, even just if we're talking about like discipline, right? We have really big ideas about how the physical space should be, but we're also in a situation where it's going to be very limited and dependent on funding. But what we do know is the core of the piece, which is a sound piece. And so from my understanding of previous exhibitions, they're often very much more in the physical and the visual world. And this is just not going to be that. It's going to be a different kind of experience. And so we're looking for folks who are going to be enlivened and excited by that. I think for me, from a design world, I know we have a technical director who we love and is awesome, which means that my goal is to support the technical side with really established, experienced people who we really trust, which hopefully will allow us, if we make connections with folks who maybe don't have quite as much technical experience or whatever, to come on board with their vision, which is more of like a practical kind of sense on my end. I don't know.
Well, I find that there's this really interesting flipperoo is my technical term for it, where when something new or different or a population is sort of leading in a way that, like you were speaking to earlier, maybe the larger culture of that practice isn't used to. There's this weird flipperoo where suddenly the onus becomes that those curators or those artists are suddenly supposed to represent everybody. But that same expectation doesn't happen when it's the other way around. Because if it did, there wouldn't be flipperoos. There would always be this sort of generative, equality-driven, access-conscious, sort of lateral bigwig. No, everyone would be important. Everyone would be working. Everyone would be striving. Everybody would be trying their best. So I think that there's something, I think I'm very aware that I don't want to fall into this kind of default that we have around status. Not to say that those who are senior, who have been established, who have been leading and sacrificing are without merit, because I 100% think that they are. And there's also value in this collectivity impulse that I think that we're offering.
What would you say that Canada brings to the Prague Quadrennial that no other country does?
I think we bring like a kind of tongue-in-cheek courage.
I was about to 100% that, Lisa.
Even the artists that I've met from Canada, like so-called Canada at the symposium, and I feel like the other thing is that there's just a generosity, and I would hope that other countries are bringing these things alongside. I don't think we're necessarily unique in that. I hope we're not unique in that. But I just feel like listening to the folks doing the talks and at the symposium, there's a bunch of stuff. I'm like, oh my God, we've been doing that for a long time. Or, well, that's not a new thing. That's design. Really? That's as far as, or I feel like they kind of got to, point A, we're already talking at point F, in the alphabet train. I don't know. That was the weirdest metaphor ever.
The alphabet train.
I have no idea what I even mean by that.
I'm walking away from this episode with so many new phrases.
The alphabet train. Okay.
The flipperoo.
I'm gonna hop on the alphabet train.
Thank you. Toot toot.
And
come on board.
Choo choo. And just say, I think Canada as an idea, I think that there's sort of there's a bit of a scrappiness to us as a national, in terms of our arts community, in terms of theater, and then extended into, living sort of in this shadow of the US and whatever. But I feel like what Lisa's saying is really true. And I think especially on the West Coast out here, because it is, I do a lot of work with the Associated Designers of Canada. I had a board meeting today with them, and like so many people are in Ontario. And when you live in Ontario and you're a designer, like you can drive from Toronto to Hamilton to Stratford. You can work. There's just more stuff close to you. When you live in Vancouver, it's just you're a bit far away from the sort of center of where the people are. And so I think what Lisa says is really true, is that the community here has really grown and kind of worked within the limitations we have, both sort of funding wise, cost of living wise, but also it's created really exciting things. And I think that it is true that especially in the pockets of the theater community that I work in and that Lisa works in, there's been really deep investigating about what does it mean to be here? What does it mean to live on this unceded land specifically? What does it mean our relationship to the rest of the world? I just think there's a lot of people here really investigating that really deeply. And so it was cool, especially as Lisa and I are both totally newcomers to the PQ thing. But at the symposium, I was like, oh yeah, we totally are on the same page as these folks from Southeast Asia and these folks from Australia. And, we can see the connections, the international connections there.
If I may, I remember the first quadrennial I went to. That was probably 2007. And I don't think I've ever felt more welcome in a space in my life. Just because you tend to assume that you're working in this isolated, undescribable space as a designer already, as a theater designer, right? Like, I feel like my parents don't know what I do. Like, if I asked them to define what is that I do, they would be like, I don't know, you work in theater, I guess. But there, it was like, oh, they're all like me. Like, everybody here is like me. They all care about the same things. They're all excited about the same things, right? And it was this like clash of nerds that was so
yes.
heartwarming. And we gotta do another one of these where you all tell me what your experience was in Prague. Or we should meet in Prague.
Yeah,
we should meet in Prague and do one there.
We'll meet in Prague.
Yeah, let's
meet
do that.
in Prague.
Let's do
that.
it.
That's so funny because when I went to the symposium, I remember, I think it was you, Mishelle, maybe, I can't remember who it was. I was like, well, I'm off to Prague to make some new friends. and I felt like who else would be there except for weird nerds who like talk about space and design.
And it was true.
And it was true. And it was so exciting to see and hear people doing their nerd stardom stuff. And I just kind of thought, oh my gosh, this circle is going to just get that much bigger next year. And there's just going to be, like, even just in the first day of the symposium, I was like, okay, we have to change. We have to do this. I'm going to think about this. I don't know what that means, but I got to go talk to that person and find out what they mean by that. And I found that just so like what you're describing, like just so satisfying, because you're right. I think we don't often get those. We're so product driven. We're just making the thing by this time and everyone's got to be happy while they're doing it. And that, I think the pleasure of process and the pleasure of design in whatever capacity you're being called to design, whether it's relationships or sound or space or exits and entrances or safe second stories of, pretend buildings or whatever. I just think we just don't have the privilege of the time to nerd out on that kind of stuff together.
Yeah,
very
that's
often.
True.
Yeah,
that's true. And I think that feeling that you're describing is very much true for every time that I've gone to Prague, where you come back and you're just so excited and you're like, I want to do stuff. I want to do that thing that they did that I saw they do in the other side of the world. I want to try that too.
Cool.
Creatively energized to play, right? Like it makes you want to play.
Yay! Totally. I like playing. Playing is good.
All right. Let me wrap us all up with one very, very loaded question. Okay, you all ready?
Ready.
Here
These
goes.
Weren't loaded already?
No,
okay.
no. That's not.
I'm wearing a floral pattern. How dare you?
It's gonna get serious now.
Okay.
I get that there's kind of like, again, as a curatorial team, there's two aspects of kind of like the work, right? There's the catching all the people, right, that you can with your net, or just like inviting people, creating the mediums for people to be part of this conversation and to jump on board and join you into this celebration, right? But then there's the second part, which is how are we gonna be seen in Prague? Like when we go to the World Forum, right? Like how do we want to be represented? What do you want the people in Prague, or the people in the world, right? The nerds of the world unite to learn about Canada when they're there, when they meet you there.
I mean, we didn't really talk that much about Seventh Fire, this piece, as what it is. I think when I can speak a little bit about sort of the design side of it. So this piece was built initially in a space in Vancouver called Loeb Spatial Sound Studio, which was actually created using 4D technology, which was created in Budapest. And there was a sound designer who was from here, who went and did a residency there and then decided to build this space in Vancouver. I believe it's the only one that was built in North America. And so we had this incredible opportunity to create this piece over many sort of 2-week stints over a couple years within this space, which has like 36 speakers. It's very, very, it's like a beautiful
immersive
room.
It's
very
immersive. Yeah.
And then the folks at Loeb supported us in basically adapting the piece to a 13 speaker touring setup, which we've taken.
Which they had never done before either. So it was new for us.
Yeah.
And it was new for them.
Well, it was this piece also, in terms of the context of 4D sound, my understanding is that it's often used for ambient music and not necessarily theatrical or, more story-based things. So ours was also the longest piece that they'd ever done. It's 85 minutes long. And I can just say that for me, like in the nerd world, as a sound designer who comes from a music background, so my real training is in music, and then I learned about the sound design technology. As a woman, sound nerds can get pretty exclusionary and it cannot be a very inviting space. Like in terms of the tech of it, in terms of the learning of it, it's definitely changing. But I think that I can just say in terms of that piece of it, just to like make it an inviting place. And I think that there is, sound people can get in a room and they can talk about gear and not shut up about it. And that's fine. But I am hoping for myself to take away the sort of fanciness of it and just talk about how we're using this as a tool to tell a story. And that's ultimately what it is. We're using what is effectively quite a simple setup in terms of a bunch of speakers in a circle around a room. And how do we use that to build something and make it feel a bit accessible and a little less sort of behind a secret tech bro kind of veil? Because ultimately, there's a lot of tech behind it, but it's not quite as mysterious as maybe some people think about it. So that's on my side as the designer. That's one thing that I hope to offer folks.
Sure. I feel like we're missing a lot of context. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about Seventh Fire?
Yeah, I can, because I think what Michelle's speaking to is so true and so exciting, I think, from a sound perspective. Like in the world context, I think, just never mind the world, like even in so-called Canada, it's a big deal because it's a new form, really, that Mishelle and I are co-creating and consistently kind of interrogating. What is this? Especially for me, I'm like, what does it do? What is it doing? And Michelle's like, Lisa, it's just doing sound. And I'm like, no, what is it doing? And so I think a simple way to describe the source of the exhibition is the Seventh Fire is an immersive sound piece performance inspired by Anishinaabe, so Ojibwe ceremony in particular, but also Coast Salish protocols and kind of prairie values and ways of being from an Indigenous point of view. And in its current state, it tells the story of 2 generations of women, one of whom is a grandmother and the other 2 younger women are sisters, one of whom was initially taken from the community, and then when she tried to return, it didn't, as it says in the piece, it didn't take. And so she leaves again to an urban existence. And so this story takes place in the past, the present, and the future. And it intersects those 3 women's stories inside this kind of prophecy that unfolds, and that ultimately pulls the people in the piece into that prophecy and pulls them into sort of collective action around what is the future that you all now individually, what is the future that, and kind of invites them to answer this question. So the idea of the original piece as a performance, as a play, has already deconstructed. So the Loeb studio is so beautiful, and it has these lowered ceilings, and it's this really beautiful, it's like, I don't know what, that beach or pine kind of aesthetic on the inside. And so when we first went to this space, I remember saying to Christine Quintana with Delinquent Theater, who was one of the early supporters of the work and dramaturgs, I just was like, oh, it's like we're going into a lodge. So where I'm from, our ceremonies happen in lodges, and they tend to be quite small and short, and they sort of mimic a womb shape. So they're sort of, what's that shape, you guys?
Like a dome?
Like a dome.
Dome,
or an arch.
an arch. And so you kind of have to crawl in to get into it. And so a question arose for me very early in the process is, can I create a work that when people leave that show, they feel like how I feel when I leave ceremony? Mm-hmm. Is it possible for theater to truly transform? Was sort of the sub question of that initial impulse. And so I think that question probably will still live in this exhibition. So when you speak of the world and, you know, so-called Canada artists like responding to it, I haven't even thought of that, because I'm really invested in the questions that live inside the work. And I'm really invested in the structure that exists inside that story, because we do bounce around in time and space. I call it owl time, where you're kind of sometimes simultaneously in 2 or 3 different spatial time sequences that you really are just hearing. And because you're relying fully on your sense of sound, most people, their eyes are closed. Many people fall asleep. And I think early in the process, when we were kind of prototyping the show, we realized there was a lot of concern from my Cuttler collaborators around, will white people get this? Will men understand? Who's going to really understand all of these layers of nuance that you've written into this, Lisa, from a really kind of distinct point of view? And at a certain point, I was very unsettled, and I couldn't figure it out. And finally, I was getting irritated. And I was like, why am I getting so irritated by these beautiful, generous, gifted collaborators that I have? And I realized it's because I'm not making it for the Cuttler body. I'm making it for a future that we're all equally a part of. And so just by default, another really big part of, I think, what Joe was speaking to earlier and what Mishelle was speaking to in terms of relationality, we're really curious about, well, how can we help people trust the work? So for me, I feel like that's a question that, can you enter this space and trust the work? You don't have to trust us. You don't have to know anything about us. If we've done a good job curating the space, that you somehow feel cared enough to be your own authentic self inside that space. So for us in the touring version, or the initial kind of production of the piece, a lot of care protocols were sort of birthed. So there's a lot of times when people come into the space and there's a lot, we call them a lodge keeper. It's often me, but sometimes others. And that person tucks you in with blankies, and you have these comfy kind of lounge things that you can lie down, or you can sit, and you can move, and you can stand up, and you can change places. And there's this some very minimal lighting that suggests that you're all sitting around a fire in the center of the lodge. And that really, the invitation is to sort of let go of what you think you know. So to the world, I would say, well, can you let go of what you think you know by coming to the Canada exhibition at the PQ 2027? Can you do that?
I will just add to that beautiful encapsulation.
Wow.
That there's a somatic element to our piece, because sound is physically acting upon our bodies, especially in the exhibition, which is going to be a really small little 5 meter by 5 meter square. So there's something both in this new exhibition piece and in the show itself, where it really, just the act of being in the space is that these voices are really having a physical interaction with your body. And so from a design question, it is, how do we use our skills as designers to create something that really physically impacts and allows for that opening up and that sort of maybe dreaming in your own mind of what is being explained to you. And then just the last piece is to say that in terms of presencing the absent, there's 3 performers that speak in the show. Elise is one of them, Margot Kane and Tasha Faye Evans. And it was important for us, as we're talking about presencing the absent, is to have the real voices of these Indigenous women there in Prague in the space with their voices physically interacting with your body as you're there within the piece.
So they will be there. They'll be part of the piece.
Well, they're voices. They're recorded voices.
Okay. Yes. Back to my question of what do you want, the people, the designers of the world to get from Canada. I love this sense of almost like this tension that is created between like a high tech, like exclusive setup and a very ritualistic, very kind of like grounded concept, right? And how they meet and they create this space for transformation. I think it's, I'm very excited to see it. I'm very excited to be in the space, you guys.
The more I keep hearing about it.
I'm so excited to hear your response when you come to the exhibition, and because I think that space that you're talking about, where those two kind of energies coalesce and transform, the idea, the way that we've been building the piece is that you are that site of transformation.
Sure.
And so your experience will be very different than, like a ceremony person that I know who has grown up going to lodges versus, an AD from wherever in Greenland or something, I think that is what's interesting about this invitation that we've received from the ADC is to bring this notion and see what evolves from that and see what relationships might become from that, which I think is kind of the best part of art, to be honest. Not just the transformation, but those relationship vibes that get to boogaloo.
I love that no matter what, like, again, even if you don't get it, right? Like the idea of you get it or you don't get it, but even if you don't get it, you can still trace it back to the story, the tale that animates it, right? The idea of like the splitting, right? Belonging, but also displacement. The idea of like forming new traditions and kind of like sticking to old traditions. It's fascinating. I mean, it's very complex, both technically and also conceptually. But I will say, again, speaking for the community that has been going repeatedly to Prague, if there's a place in this world for work like this, the PQ has got to be the place for it. So
yay, Prague!
I think people are going to be very excited. I think people are going to be very excited to see your exhibit. Joe, you wanted to add something?
No, thanks for giving me space. I'm excited. I am the absences and silences, going back to that PQ theme. And what I'm excited for, I hope the world to experience is this, what you just heard. It's profound. And for the takeaway for me, I can't wait to experience it myself, who hasn't experienced the previous work and where it's heading yet, is I have a lot of others who passed in my life. And I've found myself as an artist often in that dark space in the woods at night, where absence and silence is very loud. And I'm really excited by that catalyzing of this, because I think it speaks towards what is unique about this land and what's been here long before it was called so-called Canada. And it is, I think, embroiled in the art of those, I think, turning to the land for that knowledge. It's there in the roots, it's there in the water, it's there in those watersheds. And I'm excited that a piece of that might get to be witnessed or experienced at a global festival like this. That's what I wanted to say. That's the right word.
Thank you.
The ephemeral.
Thanks, Joe.
Lisa, Mishelle, Joe, thank you to the three of you again for joining me here. Before we say goodbye, can you tell me a little bit about your crowdfunding efforts for the team?
Yeah, so we're crowdfunding. Yeah, we're crowdfunding through Canada Helps, which is an organization that helps not-for-profits fundraise for charities that have charity status in Canada. So we are crowdfunding directly through that platform. because it gives you a lovely little tax receipt for feeling good about doing something.
Yay!
So we are fundraising through that platform, which you can find through any one of our sort of socials. The main socials at Associate Designers of Canada on Instagram. There's a link. The link to the fundraiser is not short, so I won't say it out loud.
Don't worry, we're gonna leave the links for all of you here.
Wonderful. It's down in the notes, in the show notes.
Down in the show notes. Yes.
So we are trying to crowdsource. We're turning, of course, to sponsorships. Our government, the government funding through the arts councils, of course. They have very different runways for what the PQ timeline is, as we all know. That have been there a few times before, this 4-year gauntlet that it is. But really, truly, at the end of the day, I was able to, back in 2011, go because of private fundraising from my mentor who was able to take me, and that opened the doors. So that call out sort of remains that a lot of us do need to help.
And this, the fundraising we get will just help us support more folks, more designers and artists and people here to be involved in the piece. It'll help us make the lodge be what we dream it will be. It's all gonna go, in theory, back to folks who really could benefit from this project and being part of it, and help us make this really what we dream of it.
Yeah,
and we're mostly North America here. We all know the cost of gas right now. Flying is expensive.
Oh my gosh.
It's far away. It's really far from Vancouver.
It really is. And I think what's also kind of beautiful about whatever kind of financial support is able to be shared with us, the flip side of it is that this piece will return home. Mm-hmm. And so the support that we have allows whatever returns home to be that much more kind of enriched in terms of this dream that Mishelle and I have about the lodge that we want to build for not just the world, but really we're building it for us here to come back home. And so that piece is already beginning a life of traveling around so-called Canada, where people will be invited into that lodge, where we're hoping to have the capacity to do the show, but also have it live on its own in gallery spaces for the public to also just enjoy and be a part of.
Great. So everybody at home, remember, please support the fundraiser so we can see this work in Prague and all its glory, and we can all experience it and do another follow-up episode. Folks, thank you again very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Again, we're gonna have all the information for the fundraiser down here, but before, do y'all want to plug your socials? Do you want people to follow you?
Sure.
Your associations?
Well, so you follow Associated Designers of Canada. Yes, that's it.
Yeah,
Joe?
that's the
on
the
Instagram.
Main one.
That's the main one.
But then there's also us. You can totally follow me if you thought I was interesting. At J_Pagnan.
Huh?
Most of the socials, you'll find me that way.
Yeah.
Good.
I am at MD Cuttler. Cuttler has 2 T's.
Okay. Lisa?
Big socials person because I post my kids everywhere. But I think probably
I'm all dogs, Lisa.
I know,
I'm dog pics.
And I'm middle-aged, so I mostly use Facebook. So I'm Lisa Cooke Ravensbergen on Facebook. And
there you go.
I respond much better if somebody drops me a personal line that says, "Hi, I heard you. I heard you on this cool podcast and would love to keep up." So
sure. All right. Well, thank you again. To the three of you, thank you to everybody at home for sticking around with us. Hey, follow this, folks. Follow the co-curators for the Canada exhibition at the Prague Quadrennial. And I will see you all in the next Offstage. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bamapi.